In 1974, 18-year-old filmmaker Mark Pirro left his hometown of Ithaca, New York to take a shot at movie making in Hollywood. Pirro was no stranger to low-budget filmmaking. Since he was 13, he had been producing short films for very little money, utilizing friends, classmates, even himself. When he arrived in Hollywood, he'd gotten a job as a tour guide at Universal Studios and found that many of his co-workers wanted to be actors. Pulling from the Universal talent pool, he had produced a slick James Bond parody called The Spy Who Did It Better. The movie cost about $1,500, ran 45 minutes, and utilized the talents of several friends he worked with at Universal Studios.
I think the best time I ever had on a Paramount film was working on The Spy Who Did It Better and doing the title sequence. We had a bunch of topless women cavorting around in Mark's apartment, which is where we shot the title sequence. And I remember the lead actress, I believe, was also in the title sequence. She rears up into camera with her back to us and starts doing these sort of like martial arts moves. And then when she turns sideways, we got this clear silhouette of her breast. And here we are, like two little kids going, "Oh, wow, we can see boobs."
In 1981, Pirro had teamed up with several other low-budget filmmakers, put their films together in a package, and persuaded a theater in West Los Angeles to run the films for one night.
It was probably the genesis of all the stuff that has come since then. They had rented the theater for the night. They went out and sold out the place. They had just really enthusiastic fans. And at the time, it was the only place where an independent filmmaker, a truly independent filmmaker, could get his film shown. This is before there was a Sundance Film Festival. There was no Telluride. There was no place for guys to go with this. There wasn't any digital camera.
Among the movies shown that evening were Pirro's film, The Spy Who Did It Better, a short film produced by Pirro's future director of photography, Craig Bassett, and a Humphrey Bogart parody written and directed by Frank Darabont, who years later would go on to write and direct The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. What made the evening show so popular? Earlier that week, an LA Times article came out promoting the show as the Poor People's Film Festival. The article went on to discuss how all the films that evening were made on minuscule budgets by these independent filmmakers with no help whatsoever. This brought in a huge audience of Hollywood hopefuls, many taking film courses in college and hoping to make their own films one day. The success of the West LA show inspired Pirro to start another film, a little inexpensive showcase that was to go further than anyone involved could have imagined. Up until 1981, Mark Pirro had only produced short films, the longest being The Spy Who Did It Better, which ran 45 minutes. At this point, Pirro was interested in producing his first feature-length movie. But what would his first feature-length film be about?
But I'm constantly continuing on writing scripts and doing new bits here and there to just keep the creative juices flowing.
He started working on a screenplay entitled Virgin Vampire. While he was working on the screenplay, he had met character actor Eddie Deason, who was best known as the nerdy Eugene in the movie Grease, and the equally nerdy Ringo Klaus in the Robert Zemeckis film I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Working with Eddie originally was kind of neat because here we had this actor who had been in movies with Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis, and so he had name value. So this was going to be his first starring film.
Deason liked the idea and agreed to star in the film. He had no idea what he was getting into. The movie had a production budget of about $2,500 and was to be shot over several months throughout 1981. With Deason signed, the next step was to cast his leading lady.
Well, I actually saw Laurie Sutton's picture at a friend's place, and I said, my God, this girl's beautiful. I've got to put her in a film. I hope she'll be willing to do it. So we met, I interviewed her, and she was wonderful.
Statuesque actress Laurie Sutton was brought on board as Deason's love interest. Sutton had appeared in Mel Brooks' History of the World and Michael Crichton's Looker, and was perfect as the beautiful and impressionable Dolores Lane.
I think at the time I was just very happy to work. I was happy to get any film experience, whether it was good or bad. I mean, it wasn't porno, you know?
For Dupas's sultry vampire sister, actress Mariah Gant was hired. Pirro had seen her picture and was reminded of 60s horror actress Barbara Steele.
I think I read an ad that was in the trade papers, and I sent in my photographs and my resume, and Mark Pirro called me back, and it was exciting because it was a lead role, so I was very happy with it.
Bobby Dorsch was originally a tour guide with Pirro at Universal Studios.
I had used her in 2 of my short films before we did Polish Vampire, and then I went ahead and put her in Polish Vampire as Misty. She was so cool. She was very smart, very fun person to be around, a fun person to work with.
Her brother, Steve Dorsch, had been a friend of Pirro's for years and was instrumental to this film because he supplied about half its locations.
A lot of the movie is shot in and around Steve's house.
Not the first choice for Dupas's father, Hugh O. Fields ultimately got the job when the original actor hired for the role got a last-minute case of stage fright. On Monday, June 22, 1981, at midnight, Pirro, Mariah Gant, Eddie Deason, and a handful of friends invaded a restaurant in Burbank, owned by another of Pirro's ex-tour guide friends.
A lot of the extras that you see in the bar scene, a lot of those were tour guide friends of mine.
I was there to be one of the extras in the background for the scenes that took place. It turned out, I was there until 4 in the morning, and I left earlier than several others like Mariah.
They shot until 7:30 a.m. and managed to cover about 4 pages of script, which would amount to about 4 minutes of screen time.
And there were like 20 people there. It was like a real movie set. And the biggest job I did that day was refill a cup of water for continuity. You know, that was my first experience on a Pirromount set.
You know, they came and asked me, they said, okay, we need you to be the light guy. So, my big job was I got to hold a light with a blue gel. But I found the whole thing fascinating because, here we are, we're in this Mexican restaurant. There are no permits. I mean, that's, not even part of the plan at all. It's trying to be as undercover as possible, but there's still a very much a schedule to be kept. It's like, we got to get in, we got to get these shots, we got to go and do it, get in, get out, and, and it's all happening after the restaurant closes. So you're talking about midnight to, 4 in the morning.
2 weeks later, on Monday, July 13th, the cast headed by Deason and Mariah Gant went back to the bar in Burbank and this time shot all the exterior scenes that were required. Shooting started at 11 p.m. and went on until around 4:30 a.m. The film looked as though it was sailing along smoothly. Confidence level was high, and Pirro boldly scheduled a third shooting date just 1 week later.
The mindset that you had to get into to do a Pirromount film, I think that kind of can-do, how am I going to solve this problem attitude is something that, I think everyone who worked on the films pretty much carried through with.
Well, everybody had a lot of high energy. We were young. It was an experience, and it was really fun.
This scene was shot in the parking lot of Pirro's apartment, but unfortunately, because of the limited lights and inferior film stock they were using, the footage was too dark to use. This was a little discouraging to Pirro and some of the actors involved. Less than 2 weeks later, another shoot was scheduled back at Mucho Mas. This was to be a dinner scene between Dupas and his intended first victim. Deason and Laurie Sutton were on the set at 11 p.m., and the shooting went on until about 5 a.m. This was day 5, and even though there were a couple of wasted days due to bad footage, the energy was still high.
This is real fun, I gotta tell you. Hi. I'm over here, Mark. Hello? Hi.
It was really amazing because it was a full-on movie set going on. Mark was definitely in control, but he had some guys that were working with him that were making sure that people were in the right places and people were doing stuff.
On Saturday, August 22nd, the opening scene of the movie was to have been shot. The opening was to have 2 victims being stalked by Deason's father and sister vampire. Actors Kent Butler and Tiana Bentley, who were to be the victims, were on the set at 11 a.m. However, the actor hired to portray the father vampire had not arrived.
Our first dad had gotten stage fright and didn't show up for the shoot. He was cast and did a great job at the audition, and then he didn't come. So we were all sad. It was just very depressing when he didn't show up, because we were all related to him, you know. It was really a nice person, and it was too bad.
Doubles were used for the stalking shots. Meanwhile, an immediate replacement for the father vampire was sought, and the filming would be scheduled around any father vampire scenes until a new actor was brought on board. However, that problem was mild compared to the dilemma that Pirro was about to face. After production day 8, Eddie Deason announced that he also no longer wanted to be a part of the movie.
He is such a jerk.
He wanted to be somewhere else. There wasn't a lot of money involved in our project, and I think his interests were in the cash flow thing.
This wasn't like regular filmmaking. This isn't with dressing rooms and catered meals and chauffeurs. So I think he was a little disenchanted, and after a month or so of this, not shooting every day, but a day here, a day there, I think he just sort of got had enough, and it worked out for the best.
Well, we were all pretty devastated when Eddie quit, because, he was such an important part of the film.
Knowing Mark Pirro, there's no way the movie would stop.
To make matters worse, a few days before Deason's announcement, Pirro was in a car accident caused by a hit-and-run driver who had run a red light. Pirro had sustained a light neck injury, but his car was totaled. 3 months after the first day of shooting, Pirro found himself without a car, without a star, without a co-star, and without a plan.
Well, it's never too late to make a fresh start.
Mark said, well, we're going to have to wait and we'll figure it out and put it back together. So I just thought maybe it would all fall apart.
I took his footage and put it aside and said, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and start shooting the film again, and I'll take over the lead, and then I'll just see where we go with it.
Knowing that there was little chance of him quitting the project, he would jump into the role and figure out how to make it work later. On Saturday, September 12th, 1981, the first day of the pool party scene had begun. This was also the first day of work for Bobby Dorsch and her brother Steve. It was pretty much assured that they would show up, since the pool set was located at Steve Dorsch's house and since Bobby was his sister. It took 6 nights to film the scene. All the while, Pirro was working at rewriting the script in a way that it would work in a coherent form.
No idea where the film was going to go after Eddie left.
As we started shooting, I started thinking, well, I could probably just rewrite the movie so that we can still utilize his character, or at least parts of his character, sort of like a flashback.
Mark was very inventive, and he came up with some wonderful ideas that put it together and made it complete.
I took about maybe 70 or 80% of what we shot with him and turned him into a new character. He now became the deceased brother of what I now became Dupa.
I think it was very much inspired by the character in American Werewolf in London, who comes back from the dead and talks to the main character from the dead and becomes a walking corpse in the movie. This inspired the character of Sphincter as we know it. I think most of us, when we see Polish Vampire in Burbank, remember that skeleton character perhaps more than anyone else in the movie.
So I get this call from my agent, and he says that there's some sort of an emergency on a film that's in production. He tells me I'm supposed to take over for this role from this Eddie Deaser character. I say, who's Eddie Deaser? He tells me, it's not important, but I should go anyway.
Of course, to make this work, Pirro had to kill off his star. A scene was shot with Pirro dressed in Deason's clothes, getting burnt up in the sunlight. Various close-ups of body parts were shot withering away. Cinematographer Craig Bassick designed a wax likeness of Deason's face and molded it over a plastic skull. By melting the wax with hair dryers and shooting the sequence with time-lapse photography, Sphincter was born.
Well, as with any horror movies, what happens to dead people anyway, they rise again. Perhaps they rise in different ways, or they come into different figures or different forms.
To placate anyone in the audience noticing the similarity between American Werewolf and Pirro's film, Pirro made it a bit more obvious by retitling his film from Virgin Vampire to A Polish Vampire in Burbank.
Excellent. No, my name's Dupa. Is that Polish?
And Mark said, "You want to be in my movie?" I said, "Sure." It was like a tradition. I'd done all of Mark Pirro's films, and he had me actually redo the Lee Neville character, which was the James Bond parody from The Spy Who Did It Better, in the jacuzzi. I'd put on so much weight, but it actually looked good for the role because I looked just like Sean Connery did in Diamonds Are Forever, because he was a fat pig in that. It actually added credibility.
Originally, Pirro had gotten permission to shoot all the castle scenes at Castle Dracula, an attraction on the Universal Studios tour.
I guess somebody got worried about insurance and knowing that we had no budget to work with, so they said that we could go in and just shoot establishing shots, but we can't really do anything with lighting and such.
Again, Steve Dorsch came to the rescue. Since Pirro was already using Dorsch's house for the pool scene, Dorsch offered his garage as a location to build a castle set. Pirro immediately started working on it. Many tests were shot with actors walking through the garage set to determine how much or how little light was necessary to achieve the desired effects. Spotlights were positioned strategically pointing at the candles to simulate candlelight, and a 15-watt bulb resting against a painted sheet backdrop of the moon. The entrance to the castle was a staircase on Laurel Canyon Boulevard in Hollywood. It was once the entrance to Harry Houdini's estate. The full exterior of the castle was a cardboard miniature built by Craig Bassick in his living room.
Craig Bassick had built an entire model of this castle, which looked just fantastic. I just remember, it just looked dynamite.
On Saturday, February 17, 1982, the crew moved to the newly constructed set. It was the first day of filming for Hugh O. Fields, the recently cast Father Vampire. 12 days were shot in the castle set, stretched out over a few months.
That's one of the things that Mark kind of pioneered, the fact that you could, as an individual, take on Hollywood and make a feature film without ever setting foot into a real soundstage.
I wanted to bang every chick on the set. I almost scored with one of them, but when it came right down to it, I forgot I didn't have a penis.
On Tuesday, June 22, 1982, exactly 1 year from the first day of shooting, the new opening of the movie was shot. The original day for night opening with Kent Butler and Tiana Bentley was scrapped for a bigger, more elaborate beginning. This evening's production included Mariah Gant, Hugh O. Fields, Louise Samuels, Tyrone Dubois, and the first Pirromount appearance of Jim Bruce. Bruce would go on to appear in 5 other Pirromount films until his death in 1999. This scene would take 3 nights to complete.
Hey! What you be doing, my woman?
Now, Tyrone was a friend of our director of photography. We needed a black guy to play a pimp.
He came over one day and says, "Hey, we need a black guy to be in our movie." And I was black.
Why a black guy? Why a pimp? Hey, come on, Hollywood stereotypes, 1980.
My one line that said, "What you looking at, bitch?" And I was really, really nervous about that. I really didn't want to do it. And I remember the couple of times that when we were rehearsing that part, I kept saying to her, I'm really sorry. But I was only 20 years old. And I kept asking, I kept saying, "Are you okay?" And she kept saying, No, I'm fine. I said, "Okay, I just want you to know this is Mark's telling me to do this, not me. I'm not doing this."
Oh, thank God there's no full moon out tonight.
What's wrong?
You'll think I'm crazy.
No, I won't.
Well, I'm a queer wolf.
Oh, that queer wolf character? Oh, what a trip. What a trip. He kept goosing me under the water.
The character, or the queer wolf creature, got such cool reactions whenever we screened it that I thought, gee, wouldn't it be fun to take this character and expand on it and see where it goes?
And he did a wonderful part as the Queer Wolf, which, by the way, inspired Mark Pirro to then do a film about the Queer Wolf, which was probably due in large part to the tremendous performance of Paul Fartman.
There's no full moon out tonight.
Half moon.
Half moon?
That makes me bi.
I mean, there I was, all professional and everything, doing my lines. Next thing I know is his fingers up my ass. I kept getting a boner, but I'm not queer or anything.
Each day that went on, there seemed to be fewer and fewer people, because it started out as 20 people on the set, and then a few weeks later, maybe 10 people, and then as the months went on, it was down to just like 3 or 4 people as a crew.
It was just tough because the hours obviously were everybody had schedules. They were working during the day. Most of the shooting was being done at night, and it was just really tough to keep things up. I would show up sporadically.
And as that happened, I kept on showing up and became the main PA, and eventually I operated the camera occasionally when there was nobody else to do it. That was just an exciting experience to see the numbers drop and my job become more important.
The credit of most of the guys that were working with Mark, like his inner circle of guys working on the film, I mean, this was a very serious thing for them, and they were, these guys were working non-stop. I mean, this is what they were living for.
Hey! None of that in here!
Alfie Pearl was a theater projectionist when he got recruited into the Pirromount talent pool.
Sorry? Sorry? Is that all you got to say? We got fucking kids in here!
George Burns said acting, there's nothing to it. All you gotta do is remember your lines and don't bump into the furniture. He forgot to say you're supposed to do both of them at the same time. Now, that makes it a little rough.
Deviants.
On January 8th, 1983, a year and a half after the first day of filming, production wrapped with Pirro shooting various skeleton inserts, although voiceovers were still being recorded.
I did a lot of voices in the film just because it was convenient not to have to bring other people in. So I did the Father Vampire's voice.
And you won't get any more food from me. You could starve yourself for all I care.
I did Eddie Deazen's voice.
I never said that, lady. Put that thing away,
You
please.
don't believe he's our savior?
Please, lady, I never said that. Let me think it over. I'll tell you about it later.
I did the singing in the restaurant. I did a lot of the background voices.
Motherfucker 1, motherfucker 2.
I said scat.
What you looking at, bitch?
What Mark was doing by himself is actually quite remarkable. You look at it now compared to the technology available, and it's like, big deal. Anyone can do it. Back then in 1978, no one was doing it, or hardly anybody.
On October 31st, 1983, at 11:30 p.m., a Polish vampire in Burbank had its theatrical premiere at the New Art Theater in West Los Angeles.
I stood in line at the midnight premiere.
It was very exciting. We had our title on the marquee, and
There were a lot of people there.
we were all in line.
I was surprised. I thought that was pretty cool.
We were well received. Yeah. I don't think there was an open seat. We were sold out. We had all our friends.
Special projectors had to be brought in to accommodate the unorthodox format the film was produced in. The show was a success, but there was really no place for the film to go from there, since there was only one print made and no other theaters were equipped to run the movie. However, in 1984, something remarkable happened.
When I got the word that we had made a sale, I actually had a sort of like a managing company that took on the film, and when they saw the movie, they said, let's just not tell anybody the budget, let's not tell anybody the format, let's not tell anybody anything, we'll just go ahead and market this as a regular film.
When it's sold, I shit my pants. And that's not easy for a skeleton to do.
It shocked everybody. I mean, nobody expected this to do anything other than be a showcase. So the fact that it was out there was a bonus.
When I was at the Cannes Film Festival, it was there too. So, I had a couple shocking things to learn about the film that it had been on the market everywhere in the world.
It's so odd because my daughter now is 13, and she has a a friend that has rented a Polish vampire in Burbank. He knew who I was. He'd seen the movie many, many times. This is a 13-year-old. We made the movie over 20 years ago. He wasn't even born. So there's kids now that are picking up the film. It's like got this little following. I think it's very cool.
I was just very proud to be a part of a film that had that kind of recognition. In those days, people didn't make feature films out of their backyard with, amateur equipment. So this was a milestone. It was the first of its kind as far as I know.
A couple years later, the movie was picked up by USA Network for 2 years, creating a whole new legion of fans.
When it got on USA Network, that was another shock to us. I mean, we never really expected this to go anywhere.
Wow, we were all delighted. It was quite fun. You called all your friends and everything, make sure they were watching. Everybody had their tape machines going.
I called all my relatives, but I forgot they were all dead.
However, not everyone was happy about Polish Vampire's success. In 1999, the Screen Actors Guild went on a McCarthy-esque rampage, busting actors who had appeared in Pirromount's films, starting with Polish Vampire. John McCafferty, Laurie Sutton, and Eddie Deason were among over a dozen Pirromount performers who were summoned to hearings.
It was like the president of SAG. I mean, it was a huge table full of the board members, and they told us it was basically because they were after Mark Pirro. They wanted Mark Pirro to stop doing films using SAG members. I guess he had done it prior to, or actually after. So I think they wanted to make examples of us, to get back to Mark and tell Mark, this was really terrible. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done it. But in retrospect, I would have done it.
The Screen Actors Guild can kiss my pale, white, bony ass. Why aren't they spending more of their time helping their members get work instead of hassling those that manage to find some?
I was splitting my time between working at some high-end effects facility with motion control and computers, and then going over and doing Pirromount titles or Pirromount effects, in somebody's living room.
Up until now, the only way you could see this movie was an old rental copy. This had been out of print for years, and thanks to modern technology, we're now able to enhance the film. I went back and took out scratches and redid the sound. We went to the original sound masters, put it on DAT, put it into the computer, and then mixed it back into the film in stereo. So for the first time, the movie's available in stereo.
Polish Vampire is more than a little low-budget film. It represents drive, creativity, and the dream that if you keep moving forward, no matter what obstacles get thrown in your path, you can overcome them with imagination and determination.
Oh, yeah, the movie created all sorts of opportunities for me. I was up for the role of the Crypt Keeper in the Tales from the Crypt series, but I didn't get it because I wouldn't sleep with the producer.
It's always fun to do stuff for Mark Pirro. It's always a party.
I was big in the 80s.
Excuse me for being so bold, but are you waiting for someone to join you?
There's not much call for my type nowadays. For some reason, producers want actors with skin. Probably because they keep making those skin flicks.
The camaraderie among the people of, hey, my dad's got a barn, let's put on a show. That always came through and was really, the reason everybody kind of rallied around.
In Polish Vampire, excuse me.
I would not do anything degrading on camera. I'm surprised I'm doing this.